San Francisco's once bustling downtown streets still struggling to bounce back as retailers continue to flee.
The exodus continues.
A lot of retailers have been pulling out of the city.
In the past few weeks, Westfield announced it's giving up its prominent downtown mall location, while AT&T revealed it is closing its flagship store in the city.
The countdown is on in less than a month. These 3 Target stores in the Bay Area will all be shut down. And the reason? It's something we're seeing far too often.
Whole Foods is closing its largest store in San Francisco over safety concerns. Store managers tell us they're temporarily closing the mid-market location to ensure the safety of their team members.
Starbucks will be closing 7 locations in downtown San Francisco, and you see the locations on this map. 6 of them are within a few blocks of Market Street in the financial district or Union Square. One is on Van Ness Avenue at Bush Street.
According to an analysis by the San Francisco Standard, nearly half of the non-service retailers in the city's Union Square district have closed since 2019. Major stores like Crate & Barrel, Anthropologie, and H&M, just a few of the almost 100 shuttered in the last few years, while only 12 stores have opened in that time, according to the Standard.
So surprise, surprise, when you go light on crime and defund the police, then eventually stores close because they can't make any money. Let's talk about it. So we are back in what has been known as the most progressive city in America, San Francisco. Now, being as progressive as the city was, they followed suit with some more progressive policies, like defund the police and bail reform. Now, San Francisco went all in on being light on crime, essentially making shoplifting legal in San Francisco. Just so you know I'm not making this up, here is liberal CNN calling out San Francisco's shoplifters go free policy.
It comes as some stores are locking up everything from coffee to frozen food to try to combat theft. Our Kyung La visited one Walgreens that's hit by shoplifters more than a dozen times a day. It happened 3 times while she was inside.
Richie Greenberg walked into a San Francisco Walgreens when he saw in the frozen food section this.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors, and this was bizarre, something I'd never seen before. This is just more icing on the cake, telling us that rampant crime has become a regular part of life.
So typical that in the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay? Did that guy pay? He didn't pay.
Walgreens says this Richmond neighborhood store with aisles of products like mustard locked behind plexiglass has the highest theft rate of all their nearly 9,000 U.S. stores, hit more than a dozen times a day. When thieves turned to cleaning out ice cream and frozen burritos, workers grew so frustrated they resorted to the chains.
Now, crime is so bad in San Francisco that Congressman Adam Schiff actually got his car broken into and all of his luggage stolen.
Southern California Congressman Adam Schiff had his car broken into in San Francisco just before he attended a fundraising dinner for his Senate campaign. Thieves broke into his car on Thursday when it was parked in a downtown parking garage. That's according to the San Francisco Chronicle. The thieves stole his bag, and without a business suit to wear, Schiff still went to that event in Burlingame. He did, though, have to wear just the T-shirt and hiking vest.
So businesses said it's just not worth it to stay in San Francisco if we can't stop people from just coming into the store and taking things without paying for them. So businesses started closing their doors en masse.
Once a crown jewel for retail shopping, tonight the Westfield San Francisco Center is pulling the plug on its famed downtown mall. The stunning decision to walk away comes as the city struggles with homelessness, an open-air drug market, and the perception of crime. In a statement, Westfield says, given the challenging operating conditions in downtown San Francisco, which have led to declines in sales, occupancy, and foot traffic, we have made the difficult decision to transfer management.
I don't come to San Francisco anymore, let's put it that way. It's scary.
As other cities like Chicago and Portland deal with major retail closures, the mall's demise in San Francisco comes just weeks after Nordstrom announced its exit from the city center. With nearly half of the stores set to soon be vacant, the future of those still operating is unclear as the nearby Gap shutters and Old Navy plans to soon close. Westfield says sales in San Francisco have dropped 35% since 2019, while their mall in neighboring San Jose saw sales increase 66%.
So now the people of San Francisco started waking up. For instance, the first thing they did was they elected a very, very progressive DA who was refusing to prosecute any shoplifters. And then they had to go back and recall that guy, kick him out, and get a DA who was at least going to prosecute criminals. Check it out.
We began with local recall election that's getting so much national attention. The effort to unseat San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin. This is Proposition H. Yes on H means recalling the DA. No on H, keep him in office. And tonight you can see the result is resounding. Boudin is out.
They had hoped that Boudin, the former public defender turned chief prosecutor, would survive this recall election. His 18 months in office were dominated by the pandemic and the outbreak of widespread property crimes, including a rash of mass retail break-ins and assaults on several members of the AAPI community. Many of those victims complained that Boudin declined to pursue hate crime charges in those assaults. Several of his former deputy prosecutors also became some of his loudest critics. They complained about the way District Attorney Boudin, a self-described reformer, would handle prosecutions, often opting for what they described as lenient plea deals.
Now, even though they kicked the DA out, you still had the problem of a progressive government. You had a progressive mayor, a progressive city council. So they still wanted the light on crime policies. So even though you changed the district attorney, things in the city really didn't change. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of the crime was concentrated in the minority communities. So these light on crime policies affected those communities even worse. Businesses like supermarkets and any retail stops closed down because police weren't arresting criminals who were essentially robbing those stores blind. That meant residents had to travel miles to go to the nearest supermarket to buy food instead of somewhere in the neighborhood. Now, some retailers and supermarkets tried to buck the trend, like Safeway, for instance. They tried to keep their store open in the minority community, but because crime became so overwhelming and they started losing so much money, they had to close the store in the black community.
Talk about a big change for one of San Francisco's historically black neighborhoods. It's a Safeway that has served the Fillmore district for 4 decades. It has suddenly announced it's closing.
In a statement, Safeway said in part, Safeway recently entered into an agreement to sell 3.68 acres of land at Webster Plaza in the Fillmore district of San Francisco to Align Real Estate, who will pursue a mixed-use development project to include housing and commercial retail space. Safeway says it sees this as an opportunity to be part of the solution to bring much-needed housing to the city, but some customers see it this way.
I think it's more the theft that's going on in the stores. You know, it's rampant over here.
So now the politicians in San Francisco could do one of two things. They could change their thought process on these light on crime policies and start making it illegal for people to shoplift, or they can do something else. They chose to hold the retailers accountable by passing legislation forcing stores to stay open even if they're not making any money.
San Francisco Supervisor Dean Preston has introduced legislation calling on Safeway to reverse their plan to close the grocery store. This Safeway does have a history of theft problems, the store even installing gates inside, but executives made no mention of that as a reason for the planned closure.
It was pretty shocking to community members.
Right away, Supervisor Dean Preston got to work on a resolution demanding the grocery store stay open until the property developer breaks ground.
It is not a good option to just shut down the community's only grocery store so that it can sit vacant for months or years. It just doesn't benefit anybody.
Preston says the closure of Safeway would be devastating as the next closest location is a mile away on Market Street.
This is a major slap in the face to the black community in the Fillmore, to Japantown right next door, to the many, many seniors of all races.
Now, the wild part about this is that this is the same guy who was screaming, "Defund the police, defund the police." Here it is.
This is a clip from a 5-hour-long public comment session of a July 2020 San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting, where several supervisors pledged to defund the police. In late September of 2020, Supervisor Dean Preston got heat from reform activists for voting for a budget that doesn't fire police officers. Yet the next day, he tweeted, "We remain committed to defunding the police."
Now, if you put both of these things together, defund the police and the light on crime policies, essentially making shoplifting legal, then you have this explosion in crime because no one's afraid of any repercussions if you steal something. Now, Safeway has decided to close, and they didn't care about what legislation this guy wanted to pass. Now, San Francisco isn't the only city that has this problem. Chicago, for instance, has the same problem too, and they decided to open up city-owned grocery stores.
Despite that $500 million city deficit, the mayor is exploring the idea of opening a city-owned grocery store to promote food equity.
Many neighborhoods on the south and west sides are without quality grocery stores. Windows are boarded up after private chains moved out. Take this former Aldi at 76 in Ashland in Auburn Gresham. It closed more than a year ago.
All of our stores are closing, and so now we have to go outside of our neighborhoods.
The major grocery chains claim they left these communities because it just was not profitable.
Now think about the irony in all this. These policies, these light on crime policies, were put in place to allegedly help the black and brown communities. But those policies are secretly destroying those communities. And in some places, it's gotten to the point where they're begging for the federal government to send in troops to help them with rampant crime.
A D.C. council member is sounding the alarm tonight over the wide-reaching impact of crime. Ward 8 council member Trayon White today said if rampant shoplifting continues, the Giant on Alabama Avenue in Southeast may be forced to close its doors.
Taken from this store is really taken from yourself.
Councilmember Trayon White says he's met with management and Giant who tell him they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars due to shoplifting in this store alone.
But as DC's leaders struggle to get the crisis under control, one Democratic councilman is now calling for military intervention.
There's a spirit of anarchy and lawlessness rampant through our communities. I've never seen this onslaught of violence portrayed on our women and our kids. And enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
We are clearly in a war zone. So I have spoken with the DC National Guards. And while I have to have more conversations with the chief of police, which I have today, and the mayor and my colleagues, we have a long way to get there. We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're simply asking our federal partners for help and presence in our community because we know that officers who have a handgun can combat 3 people with AR-15s and AK-47s shooting down the street.
Now, this is my take. First, you have to hold people accountable for committing crimes, even shoplifting. And it seems like Democratic lawmakers don't understand the simple principle of cause and effect. By essentially allowing people to shoplift without any consequences, that loses millions of dollars from retailers who can't afford to keep their stores open if they can't make money off of the goods and services they provide to the community. And passing laws to force retailers to stay in San Francisco, even though we know that they have a huge crime problem, even though we know these retailers are losing millions of dollars, isn't the answer, because the only thing that's going to do is force more stores not to come to San Francisco. It's going to make it harder for a store to open up in that area, because if I'm a retailer and I know, hey, if I open up a store in San Francisco, they won't allow me to leave if things get too bad. They're going to pass laws that are going to force me to stay and force me to lose hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, knowing that it's their fault these crimes are happening. Now, as always, tell me where I'm in the comment section. Tell me if you agree with these Democratic policies of defund the police and light on crime policies not holding shoplifters accountable, because I think it's essentially destroying these communities. But there may be some other reason that I'm overlooking, and you can educate me in the comment section. Now, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.